What is that? What is that? No way. Today, I'm going to be reacting to your watch collections. So a couple of days ago, I messaged the Chisholm Hunter Watches family group chat and I asked you to submit your watch collections. As per tradition, we do one of these videos every month. Might have missed a month or two, but we do normally do these videos every month. And I was honestly inundated even more than last time with hundreds of watch collections. So I did my best to pick as many as I possibly could, and we're gonna react to them live, see what people have in their collections. Right, let's go in here and start with Mike. Now, Mike didn't have an Instagram handle, but he did email these across. So, up first, let's have a look. Okay, nice. So, on the left, we have a Rolex Mariner, a perfect example of why boring is better. There's a clear reason why the no date variant has so much more weightless time than the date variant, because it looks so much cleaner, so much more aesthetically bold. It serves one purpose, and that is to tell the time, and it does it wonderfully. It's just a perfect addition to anyone's collection. With that said, the fact that the bezel is not aligned, that frustrates me, but listen, awesome watch. Next up, we have the Rolex Datejust on the right of that, and this has a beautiful green dial, and actually it has the flat bezel, not the fluted bezel, and I much prefer that kind of flat bezel when talking about the Rolex Datejust. I feel like the fluted just adds a degree of complexity that's not really needed, so I think that's absolutely banging, actually. It's simple, it's more dressy, but it's awesome. On the right of this, we have a Rolex Oyster Perpetual, and there's actually quite an interesting story about the Oyster Perpetual. So Mike actually said, I've had the green and blue, but the silver dial with the yellow gold markers just pops. It took 15 months to get from the AD, and it's going to be my son's graduation gift. And anything that has a sentimental attachment like that, a graduation gift or a birthday present, or to mark a special occasion, is a special watch, and that is what the industry is about. Taking a step down, if we look in the picture, just go down a little bit from that, we actually have an Omega DeVille. Now, these DeVilles, in my eyes, separate a genuine watch collector from someone that follows a little bit more of the hype. Reason being that these are often overshadowed by the Speedmasters, the Omega Seamasters, the Omega Planet Oceans, but they are really dressy, awesome watches. Now, they've never fit in my wrist quite right, with the leather strap especially. Leather straps just don't go in my kind of bony wrists, but I do love this, and I love what I'm highlighting right now. There's the central seconds at the 6 o'clock mark. I love how dressy and elegant that looks. On the left of that, we have the Longines Big Eye, actually an understated, a kind of sleeper of a watch, and also there's an interesting story about this one. So Mike says he owned this years ago, it then left the collection, but he reacquired it this year, and it won't be leaving the collection again. And it's interesting that us watch enthusiasts, we tend to do this. We tend to get stuff in and then sell it to make way for others, the more hypey models, and then realize once it's gone, actually, I really like that watch. And I actually did that with an Omega Seamaster Great White. It's been my biggest watch journey regret selling that. So my advice on that would be hold on to watches for a little bit longer than you think you need to sell, and that will give you clarity on whether you really want to sell it or it's just the hype going on. On the left of that, we can see a Tudor Black Bay 58 in blue. Now, of course, there's a couple of different variations of this watch to choose between nowadays. You've got the black, burgundy, you've then got, obviously, the blue. You've got a couple of different variations of this watch. Honestly, I really like this, but I would change it. If you want some advice, I would change it to a NATO strap. I think that would bring out, because looking at this collection, it's very dressy, right? And I think that putting a NATO strap on this would make it that outdoors, more adventurous watch to you. And I think that would just be a really kind of cool addition to the collection. Change it up just a touch. Now, there is two more watches. Right, this is cool. So on the left, we actually have a vintage Tag Heuer Aquaracer. And interestingly enough, this is the first nice watch that he had, and he recently had it serviced. And when he serviced it, it almost cost as much as when his dad bought him the watch in the 1990s. How insane is that? On the right of that, we have a Swatch SCN 101, and swatches, what can I say? They're fun, and they really boomed into popularity actually recently with the Omega Speedmaster, not the Speedmaster, but the Moon Swatch, if you want to call it that. But Swatch has always been an amazing brand and actually have an amazing bunch of history. They were the brand that made the rule that you should have watches on both hands, which is actually a really interesting concept. And that's where Swatch came from. They were always the affordable mark, the entry-level mark for more fun watches. They do cool collaborations with tons of things. And yeah, they're awesome watches. And only true collectors really have Swatch watches in their collection. All right, so let's go to @Muckle23 on Instagram and click in here. And boom. Oh, sweet mother of God. This is going to be good. At the top left, we have a TAG Heuer Aquaracer that he actually bought at £300 at auction, which is insane because this is the Caliber 5 model, which is unreal. And actually, on a different topic, TAG have been really honing in on their movements recently. They've been really making a big deal out of kind of finessing their movements and not just being what is perceived in the industry as a more stylized brand. So TAG Heuer Aquaracers, they're pretty cool. On the right of that, we have, what even is that? So this is a Hamilton Khaki Chrono in black, and it just goes to show that there's not only the Hamilton Khaki field to choose between. And this was actually in the Jack Ryan movie, I believe it was the Jack Ryan movie, which is cool. On the right of that, we have a Rolex Datejust with, it looks like a blue dial with a pretty incredible Jubilee bracelet. On the right of that, we have an Omega Seamaster, not quite the king, because it looks like this has a blue dial, but it's almost the king. It has a blue rubber strap, a blue bezel, and a beautiful white dial. Blue has personally never been my color, but I do really like that. On the right of that, we have the Rolex Explorer 2 in black, the perfect adventure watch from Rolex. It's understated, it's brilliant. And then below that, speak of the devil when it comes to Swatch and what boomed it into fame, but this is a moon swatch. I think that everyone, especially when the first moon swatches came out, all bought the moon swatches because stylistically, they look amazing on the wrist. They really, really do. They give the impression of a Speedmaster at a fraction of the cost. On the left of that, we have a Tissot PRX Powermatic 80 with the blue dial, and that orange strap, that's not something that I've ever thought on doing, but that looks really good. On the bottom of that, we have the Casio GA2100, and he actually says he bought into the hype, but it does not disappoint. And it's interesting, sometimes when you buy into the hype, it really stings you, but other times you buy into the hype and think, no, this is definitely for me. And that's actually super cool. Casio is such a good brand, isn't it? I mean, how can you flaw a brand that you can buy a watch at £10 and it lasts 10 years? On the left of that, we can see a CWC G10, and it's actually comboed, I believe, with a Bark & Jack NATO strap from our good buddy Adrian, who we all love. And it's actually a really good combo. That looks like the adventure rugged watch you'd wear up hills and not be afraid to get it damaged, scratched up, and give it some real personality. So this is an interesting one. On the left of that, we've actually got a Seiko World Timer GMT, and he says, drunk purchase, don't know why. Trust me, we've all been there. Next up, let's go for johnwoodhose.5, and that's his Instagram handle. Oh my goodness gracious. All right, this is a biggie. Okay, so on the left here, I'm just going to zoom in on it. Quite blurry, but it's a TAG Heuer Formula 1 model. Love the stainless steel bezel on that. Super, super cool watch. On the right of that, we have an IWC Pilots model, the Chrono model. And I actually love the way that kind of anthracite gray plays against the dial, especially with that splash of red on the little hand just that I'm zooming in on, kind of highlighting here. And the calfskin leather strap, again, it's not what I would go for on a watch like this, but I do understand the Pilot's heritage, the Pilot's roots. On the right of that, we have an Omega Aquaterra with this beautiful teak blue dial, and that teak pattern that's running through that dial actually represents the old teak pattern that used to run through boats back in the day. Cool bit of history there. Awesome watch. The rubber straps on these as well are pretty awesome. On the right of that, we have a Tudor Pelagos A-Lingy Red Bull Racing Edition that came out a year or two ago, which is very cool. Not for me personally, I'm not into sailing as much, so I understand the connection to that team, but that's pretty cool. And on the right of that, we have a Tudor Pelagos GMT. I actually really like the rubber strap that's on that GMT with just that little subtle white strip going down the middle. It makes it just feel like that little bit more of a tool watch. On the bottom left, we can see here that this is a Citizen Red Arrow. It actually looks quite cool with those little engravings, not engravings, but kind of threads down the strap in red. Everything's very contrasty on this watch. And he actually received this watch 15 to 20 years ago, which is awesome, and you just can't part with it. And again, that shows that this community is the best, because that's a genuine watch collector right there. That's a sentimental attachment that he has to that model. And that is what it's about. On the right of that, we can see that there's a Seiko Grand Quartz, and that's from, if I'm not mistaken, 1979. And by the way, 1979, it looks almost new. It looks almost 70s inspired. It looks like a new Seiko. On the right here, we've got the Studio Underdog. I believe that's the Avocado. Is that the Avocado? I don't get Studio Underdog's names. I love Studio Underdog as a brand, but I can't understand their names. The pizza, the Avocado, it's a funny name for a not funny price point to me, so I struggle with that, but I do understand the watches are amazing. I'm sorry, it's not the Avocado. This is the Guacamole. Do you see what I mean? On the right of that, we have a Citizen Saiosa, one of the best watches from Citizen. I talk about them far too often. And on the right of that is a Longines that not many people talk about. It's the Longines Conquest VHP. I'm actually quite a fan of the colorway on this. I mean, you've got blue dial, you've got red text and kind of bold markers, and then you've got a black case, which kind of makes it look that little bit more stealthy. That's quite nice. Now, looking at this collection as a whole, I think that there's a dressy element that you could really capitalize on. I would love to see something like an IWC Engineer or an Omega Speedmaster. Something that's very, very dressy, that doesn't have a strap, it has a bracelet, but it looks that little bit more elegant and a little less sporty than some of these other ones do. But nonetheless, awesome collection. So next up, we have at Nathan.Lee99. Wow. I mean, my first thoughts here are this is a really well-balanced collection. I mean, you've got the dress watches in the JLC, you've got the sporty aesthetics of your Omega Seamaster, but you also have the classics, the Casios, the Seikos. And what is that? That's an IWC. Right, let's talk about them. So first things first, we have an IWC 3706, and this was actually the third watch that he bought for his collection because he wanted to add a chronograph to the group and wanted it to go with a simple dial. It was actually purchased to celebrate him moving from Philadelphia to Chicago and starting a new chapter in his life. And what better way to mark a new chapter than a watch, a timepiece? I mean, maybe jewelry compares a little bit, but mostly watches. On the right of that, he has a JLC Reversal Classic monoface, and this is the dress watch. I'll never forget a conversation that I had with my brother, actually. And he said, you know, when I get married, eventually, I want to wear a JLC Reversal down the aisle. And that's just because JLC have a degree, an aura around them of just class. They ooze class. And I love that. This is the dressy watch in the collection. You can definitely see that. And then on the right of that, this is a watch that I've seen before. This is the Omega 2222.80. It's a Seamaster Diver 300 meters and it's fully quartz. And for those of you with a good memory, you remember that this was actually the watch worn in James Bond. Now, it wasn't with Daniel Craig. It was it Pierce Brosnan? I think it was Pierce Brosnan. Now, something awesome about this Omega Seamaster in particular is the bezel is actually made from aluminium. Now, over time, aluminium has a tendency to get kind of dusty, to look a little bit kind of muted down, a little bit kind of desaturated. And that's something that collectors absolutely love. That modern Seamaster, actually like the one I have at the moment, the King, because it has ceramic, it doesn't do that. So it doesn't collect the scuffs and marks the same that this would. So this is a watch that I've been looking at for a while, actually. And although I'm not as much of a fan of blue, I do like the vintage vibes of that watch. And yeah, for me, I think I might get one of them. It's awesome. On the right of that, we have a Seiko SRPK17, and this is the 55th anniversary reissue. And on the right of that, we have a 2024 Casio TRN-50-2A, and this is the Casiotron 50th Anniversary Revival. Now, looking at this collection as a whole, if you want to continue the watch addiction, honestly, I would say that I would go for a Tudor. I would go for a Tudor Black Bay 58, or maybe that's too similar to your Seamasters. You might not want that. Maybe a Tudor Black Bay Heritage, or you go for something like the Tudor Black Bay Pro. It would give you that stainless steel bezel that isn't yet in the collection with a sporty, kind of outdoorsy approach. It's that adventurous watch that I think you'd really love. Okay, so let's look at Berg 39's collection. Let's pop it up here, and it's actually a quite nice picture. I love how the pictures have just upgraded so much since the first time we did this. So on the left here, we have a Seiko SKX 779, aka the Black Monster. And I have to say, I absolutely love the stainless steel bezel on this. On the right, when we scroll across to right just here, we can see that there's a Casio. This is the Casio G-Shock GW5000U-1JF. On the right of that, we can see that there's a Citizen. Now, this is the Citizen Nighthawk BJ7010-59E. On the right of that, we can see that there's a Breitling Super Ocean, and I'm not sure if you guys remember, but recently Breitling actually did a ton of upgrades, a ton of refinements to their Breitling Super Ocean range, and I'm such a huge Breitling fan. I really am. I think they're understated, discreet, and their aviation kind of roots stretch back so far. On the right of that, we have the Oris Titan, and this was actually purchased back in 2009, and you can see that it's been really worn and it's been loved. And actually, when I'm looking at vintage watches, that's what I look for. I don't want something that's, been refurbished and looks amazing. I want something that's been lived in, that's been loved. And that looks like it has been loved. I love how dusty the bezel's getting, especially around the red on the right-hand side. That is honestly a classic. Now, I think for you, again, I'd probably suggest either a Seamaster or a Tudor Black Bay. With that said, a chrono model wouldn't go amiss in that collection in terms of a bit more dressy of a chrono model, because I can see that you've been wearing the Oris kind of as a daily beater there. So maybe you go for something like maybe an Omega Speedmaster, something like the White Dial Speedmaster. I think that'd be a pretty good addition to this collection and give a bit of a point of difference. Right, so next up we have Andy, and Andy has no Instagram handle again. And oh my God. Okay, we've got a lot to work with here. Let's have a look. Okay, so on the left, at the top left, you can see that this is actually a Seiko 6138-8000. This is the Jumbo, and it's from 1975. And this is a watch from his birth year. And that's something that I actually want to get soon, is something from 1997, when I was born. So I really understand the love and connection that people have to a watch from their birth year. And at first glance, I'm not gonna lie, just looking at it as a wide shot, that to me looks like my Omega Speedmaster Apollo 11. That is awesome. I honestly mistook it for that, but that's so cool. I love the way that the yellow plays against the black. Love the bracelet, futuristic feel, and it's in very good nick for being from that year. On the right of that, you can see that there's a Grand Seiko SLGH013, and this was a 25th wedding anniversary watch, which is an awesome occasion to celebrate with a watch. And also, a suggestion that I'd make here, and it might not be for you if you're super nervous about scratching it and you really want to keep it in the safe because it's so sentimental, and I understand that. But I was actually in Iceland recently with James McVeigh, and he's essentially put his Shunbun on a NATO strap, and he says that he wears it so much more now because he's not nervous about the bracelet. And it looked bloody incredible on the NATO strap. So it's definitely one to try, honestly. If you want to change the personality of it a little bit, definitely try it, but awesome watch. On the right here, we have an Oris Big Crown Pointer date in bronze, and it's actually patinaed. You can start to see the patina of the bronze really nicely, which is a good thing. And bronze actually works well with that green, that shade of green that they'd used. I quite like that. I do. I quite like that. It's not something that I would buy personally. I think that if I was to go for a bronze, it'd be something along the lines of a khaki field bronze, just because of the price, but I do like that, and I love the fact that every patina is unique to the person. On the right of that, there's a Sin 103, and this is actually a limited edition. And then on the right of that, we can see that there's a Rolex Milgauss, which is awesome. You can see that iconic green glass running through, blue dial, super, super cool. And on the right of that is something. It's a Hanhart 417ES. Now, I can't really see that just because of the way that the light's looking in this, but it kind of looks like a Longines Big Eye, kind of that Pilot's chrono model. Also, I'm not sure what that red dot at the top is. Yeah, that's an interesting one. On the bottom here, we can see that there's a Doxa on the left-hand side, and this is the Doxa Sub 300 Shark Hunter. On the right of that, we can see that there's a JLC Reversal Classic Monoface, another Monoface, and this was for his 50th birthday. Absolutely awesome. Love those watches. On the right of that, you can see that there's a Middle Ocean Star GMT, and this is a Hodinkee Limited Edition. Now, I do like that watch. With that said, I would rather it was a Chisholm Hunter limited edition. Nah, I'm just kidding. Honestly, awesome watch. Hodinkee are a brilliant company. Wow, I almost mistook this for a Tudor Black Bay GMT. Like I really did with the opaline dial. That looks very similar, but I'm guessing it's a lot cheaper as well. So this is the Laurier Hyperon Skyward, and this is actually quite a nice micro brand if you're looking at micro brands. It's quite small and they're a lot more affordable, which is pretty cool, and it gives it those vintage shoes without breaking the bank. Now, something I would have liked to see, but again, I suppose this is a cost thing, is the links down the middle. I would like to see them in polished comparison to the brushed on the right and left. But again, I'm nitpicking. Taking a step to the right, we can see that there's a Hamilton khaki field. Unsure about the strap that it's on. I would have liked it on a NATO, but I do really like it. It looks vintage. It's a daily beater. It's awesome. It's Hamilton. And taking a step to the right of that, this is quite blurry, but it looks like a Hamilton Super Comp 600. And this is that little bit more vintage. Looking at this collection overall, I think what I would go for next is something like an IWC Engineer. Actually, again, I've said that twice now, but an IWC Engineer I think would really give it a fresh pop. It would be that more sporty feeling watch, and I feel like it would just work really well in a collection like this. But nonetheless, awesome collection. You've got the perfect combination of dress in that JLC or the Grand Seiko. You've then got the kind of more rugged toughness of the Hamilton khaki field. You've then gone for more micro brands, showing that you're a real watch enthusiast. So yeah, awesome. Next on the list, we have at Knives for Gents. That's his Instagram handle. First up, we have a Rolex Submariner 12406. Next after that, we have an Omega Globemaster, which is kind of awesome, actually. I actually, it's weird. I said before I didn't like the fluted bezel on the Rolexes, but on the Globemaster, it kind of works. I don't know why, but it does. After that, we have the Panerai Radiomir, the PAM 01350. After that, we have, now this is cool. That's a Cartier Santos, but it's a Santos WSSA 0037. I love the black aesthetic combined with the steel there, the dressy, classy. Actually, you've really piqued my interest here. That is sick. After that, we then have a bit of fun with the Tag Heuer Carrera Skipper. That is such a pop of fun, and I'm such a fan of Tag Heuer Carrera glass boxes. That is a pretty awesome 6-watch collection. I mean, you've got the ruggedness of the Panerai, you've then got the dressiness of the Cartier Santos, you've then got the chronograph model of the Tag Heuer. I mean, there's not much that I could say to you here in terms of what you should go for in your collection. I think having less expensive watches like Seikos, Tissot's, Swatches, that's where real fun lies, because you can collect tons of them. So my suggestion would be have fun. Spend that money, instead of making a big purchase for the next one, spend that money on lots of little purchases. And honestly, it really fuels the fire. It really gets the collecting issue going. At Paul Curtis 140 is next, and Paul Curtis, you've got some collection on you. What is that? What is that? No way. Okay, let's start here with the watch that is sitting just out of the watch box. So this is interesting. What Paul says here, and this is why I love my job, man. I really, really do. What Paul says here is this is a Longines Presence, and it's on a Taylor ostrich strap. He says it's quite simply the most important watch in my collection, and he says it's because it's my dad's. I love that, man. Seriously, that is, there's nothing I'm going to say about that watch, because that sentimental value, man, it means everything. And you know, that's really beautiful. On the top left here, we have a brand that I've never heard of. So this is the Ganalt Ocean River. And this is inspired from both the 5-digit Rolex, the 40mm case, and the 1970 Rolex, the Milsub 5513. And it's actually hand assembled in the USA. And it's quite an interesting watch. And I like the fact that they're being open about where it's inspired from. And why I like this kind of thing is because it's not a direct clone. It's not a fake, but it's a brand that's paying homage to another and also allowing people that don't have the money for a Rolex Explorer, a Rolex Submariner, whatever it might be, to have the same look and feel. And there's nothing wrong with that. On the right of that, we have a Bell & Ross. And this is the Bell & Ross Hydromax Professional. This is water resistant to 11,100 meters, i.e. the Mariana Trench. Oh my God. On the right of that, we have the Rolex Kermit, the famous Rolex Kermit. Not much I can say about that you guys don't already know. And on the right of that, we have a Seiko. This is the Seiko SLA 043, which is limited edition to only 1,700 100 pieces. And this was actually to celebrate the 55th anniversary of the 1965 6.2 MAS. Next up, we have the Seiko SLA 055. This is again limited edition to 1,300 pieces, and this is the Prospex Antarctic Ice, the 1968 diver's recreation. I've actually been getting really into Seikos recently. I really have. I've got 3 Seikos as it stands, and I'm looking for my next. And I just found out in Iceland, I actually just found out that I love this beautiful 1968 classic with a blue bezel. It's awesome. Anyway, let's move on with this. On the bottom left-hand side, what we can see here is a King Seiko. Now, this is the King Seiko Highbeat 4502 from the 1970s. King Seiko being a brand, being a kind of sub-brand of Seiko that don't get enough love. They really don't. I've actually got a King Seiko. Beside that, we have the Longines Aviation Big Eye chronograph in titanium. And beside that, we have a Grand Seiko GMT SBGM 221. And that's a cool watch, but it's those Grand Seikos have never, they've always looked a bit too big for me. And I think it's because the lugs are just really elongated and I've never been able to get my head around it. Now, it's not to say I don't like it. I love all watches, but it's not for me. And on the right, what the hell is that? What is that? I thought it was an IWC Engineer. It looks like an IWC Engineer. So this is an IXDAO Engineer, a Chinese brand with excellent finishing and a Swiss Selita movement. Surprisingly good, even if it's just a homage to the IWC Engineer. That is remarkably like the Engineer, but I'm gonna guess for a fraction of the price. And if they're being fully transparent over where they're pulling inspiration from and taking homage, they're paying homage to the IWC Engineer, I think that's okay. I think where the lines get blurred for me and I don't agree with at all and is when it's a clear ripoff and it's a fake and it's saying it's something that it's not. On the right of that, we can see that there's a King Seiko SJE 083. Overall, I can honestly say that you are a true watch enthusiast. I mean, you've got the big brands, you've got Rolex, you've got the cool brands, you've got Bell & Ross, you've got Longines, you've got King Seikos, you've got Seikos, and also you've got micro brands that not many other people would know about, showing me that you research watches and like it. And that's awesome. That's all anyone can ask for. Also, you've got the brilliant story behind that Longines being your dad's. And that's all anyone can ask for, really, man. So what would I suggest here? I would suggest really going for a dress watch, something like a JLC. I really would. I think a JLC would work well in this collection, giving you a difference to the circular cased watches. It would be that little bit different. It'd be the more rectangular case. So next up is Victor, and his Instagram handle is Horadors. Okay, so this is cool. I like this. Okay, so let's start again from top left. So at the top left here, we can see the Citizen Eagle 7, which is a watch he bought because he loves golden watches. Beside that, we've got the Seiko Arnie. Beside the Seiko Arnie, we've got the Orient 1972, and this was his grandfather's watch. Again, bringing that personalization, that personal feel and aspect to it. Awesome. Beside that, we've got the Certina Club 200. He loves the chocolate dial here, and also I would agree, I kind of love that chocolate dial as well. It's a really cool looking watch. Actually, it's a vintage watch that I've not really seen before. Then we've got the Casio A158. We've also got a Casio MDV107, which is the dressier beater for him. We've then got a Lotus F1 Titanium, a Seiko Connect Retrograde, a Seiko Ling Samurai, a Youngins Max Bill, a Swatch Dragon Ball Cell Edition, which is awesome, love that. And then we've got a G-Shock A7719. I think what would work really well here, and it's taking a little bit of a step up, but I think you can with the watches you have in your collection, is maybe going for something like a Longines Hydra Conquest GMT. Something that's a little bit dressier, that little bit more expensive, and it's stretching it a touch. But I think that would work really well in this collection. I love how infatuated Seiko collectors get with Seiko as well. It's like you get one and then you just can't stop buying them. So next up we have Mohammed, who is at His Watches on Instagram and YouTube. So I think he actually might have a small YouTube channel. So guys, if you could do me a huge favor right now and go to subscribe to at His Watches to support everyone in this watch community, I'd really appreciate it. It goes a long way, and he also has a pretty banging watch collection. So first things first, he has a Tudor Ranger, and this is an important milestone watch for him as it was his 40th birthday present, which is awesome. To the right of that, we have a neo-vintage Concorde, which is the first obtained Grail watch. From the era where Concorde was a brand that touched the shoulders with the greats, even when it was predominantly a high-end quartz watch brand. That's actually a watch that I've never seen before, and that's really, because I literally run a YouTube channel that talks about watches, so to find a watch that I've never seen before is awesome. And I have to tell you, you've really piqued my interest here because that is cool. And also, it's 4mm thick. Sitting beside that is the Raymond Vale Millesime Moonphase. Now, the Raymond Vale Millesime actually won the GPHG award, which is essentially like the Oscars for watches. And it kind of put them on the map. And I have to say, Raymond Vale, they're awesome. They're doing some really cool stuff at the moment. And this is actually more sentimental to this gentleman than the Tudor Ranger because it was his wedding watch, which is just awesome. Congratulations, man. Sitting beside that, we have his dad's Baume & Mercier Capeland Chrono Diver. Below that on the left-hand side, if we're going to start from the left here, we've got the vintage Juvena Ultra Slim. And he says, I know very little about this brand. I know they still exist and had an era of beautiful geezer watches in the 60s and 70s. I bought this off my friend in Germany and it still works amazingly well. It kind of reminds me of like a Patek Philippe Eclipse kind of vibe, maybe less rectangular, because it's a circle, not a rectangle. But yeah, I think that's cool. Taking a step to the right of that, we have a Soviet-era Vostok, which is not the oldest watch in the collection, but I think it's the most interesting history of them all. I believe it's from the 1970s, and it's a manual wind, completely serviced and working like new. I really think that's cool. I think it's definitely a conversation starter amongst watch enthusiasts, and only watch enthusiasts would ask you about that watch, meaning that you, my friend, are a true watch enthusiast. Beside that, we have the Selton 00.04 Adventurine. And beside that, we have the Casio Edifice EQS 500. And interestingly, this is one of the most interesting watches of the bunch, actually. Below that, we have an Oris pocket watch. And this was an acquisition from a recent trip, and he can't actually say much about it. Not working 100% perfect, but it winds and tells the time when it's not losing minutes. I don't know why, but whenever I see pocket watches like this, I'm always reminded of Peaky Blinders and him looking at his pocket watch, and it's such a cool thing. And actually, I'll tell you something interesting. At Chisholm Hunter, we stock pocket watches. We sell pocket watches. And since the Peaky Blinders series came out, I don't know how long ago that was, it must have been like 8 years ago now, pocket watches sales just skyrocketed. Listen, I think this is an absolutely awesome watch collection. I think where you could maybe play about is in the chrono watch section, because there's not a chrono watch here. Now, you could go for a Longines, you could go for a Breitling, you could go for a Omega, whatever it might be. I think a chrono watch would sit really well here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you do want to get involved in the next watch collection video, then make sure you head to our Instagram at Chisholm Hunter Watches, and the family group chat. I do announce it in there when we're doing these kind of videos. Thank you guys so much. Hit that subscribe button if you did enjoy, and I'll hopefully see you guys real soon.